Bachelor sheriff knows best, studio panic, stolen formulas and the collapse of a Shore winner. I have always believed that the true comic engine of this episode begins not with Jethro's makeup and wig but in the quiet, almost panicked offices of Mammoth Studios, where the carefully constructed fantasy of Bachelor sheriff knows best starts to unravel. Every time I reach this stretch of the script I feel a familiar affectionate smile rising because the writers are doing something quietly brilliant. They are letting us watch Hollywood's own self-delusion collapse under the weight of its own recycled formulas. What touches me most is how gently the satire is delivered. There is no meanness here, only a kind of weary recognition that the industry has been telling the same stories for so long that even its own executives can no longer pretend the material is new. The scene opens with Mr. Chapman in tears. I still find that detail unexpectedly moving. Milton Frome plays the studio head with a kind of damp defeated dignity that never quite tips into pure farce. When he is told that he has only lost a television series and that it is not the end of the world, his reply lands with perfect tragicomic weight. Well, it is the end of the world. Television is the real loser. I remember the first time I heard that line as a teenager and thinking, with a sudden sharpness of recognition, that the writers had somehow managed to capture the exact tone of every desperate pitch meeting I would later witness in my own small encounters with the entertainment business. There is something almost tender about Chapman's despair. He is not a villain. He is a man who has spent his career believing that the right combination of proven elements would equal success, and now those same elements have turned against him. The description of the series itself is one of the purest comic set pieces in the entire run of the Beverly Hillbillies. I have quoted it to friends more times than I can count, always with the same mixture of delight and mild horror. Dash plays a widower lawyer dying of an incurable disease who takes his little daughter and her collie dog on a wagon train to Tombstone, or he becomes Marshall and tracks down a one-armed man who gave him amnesia. The accumulation is so perfect, so shameless, that I still laugh out loud every single time. What I love most is the way the script refuses to wink too hard at the audience. The characters inside the scene treat this Frankenstein's monster of a premise as a Shore winner. That sincerity is what makes the satire land. They are not cynical. They are simply so steeped in the language of formula that they can no longer hear how absurd the combination has become. I find myself returning again and again to the line that explains the hero's name. So that's why you name the hero Howdy Doody. The quiet admission that follows, really, it's a rehash of every hit show since 1948, feels to me like one of the most honest things the series ever said about the industry that surrounded it. In the mid-1960s, television was already beginning to feed on itself with remarkable efficiency. Westerns, family dramas, medical shows, and adventure serials were being broken down into interchangeable parts and reassembled with only the slightest variations. Bachelor Sheriff Knows Best is simply that process taken to its logical, ridiculous extreme. When I watch this scene now, I feel a strange double emotion: amusement at the nakedness of the theft, and a kind of nostalgic sadness for an era when even the thieves still believed they were inventing something. The crisis arrives with Debbie Dimples and her impossible demands. I have always been fascinated by how little the script actually tells us about those demands. We never hear the specific list. We only see the effect. Chapman is in tears. The series is suddenly impossible. And then comes the suggestion that feels in retrospect like pure Clampett logic invading the studio: replace the little girl with a monkey. Jungle series are very big this season. The line is delivered with the same practical optimism that Jed might use when deciding to plant turnips in the front yard of a Beverly Hills mansion. I love that the idea does not come from a place of mockery, it comes from a place of genuine problem solving. If the child star is too expensive and too difficult, find another sweet little dependent, a monkey will do. What moves me personally about this entire sequence is how clearly it reveals the emotional core of the episode. Hollywood in this telling is a place that has forgotten how to make anything new, yet still clings to the belief that the next combination of old parts will somehow feel fresh. The Clampetts, by contrast, have never lost the ability to look at the world with open, unjaded eyes. When the studio executives decide that Ellie Mae's chimpanzee cousin might solve their problem, they are, without realizing it, inviting that unjaded gaze into their carefully managed fantasy. I have always felt a quiet thrill at that invitation. It is the moment the two worlds begin to collide in earnest. I think often of the cultural moment in which this episode first aired. By 1967, the classic Hollywood studio system was already in visible decline. Television had become the dominant storyteller for most American families, and the old factories of dreams were scrambling to adapt. Bachelor Sheriff Knows Best feels to me like a perfect comic snapshot of that scrambling. The executives are not evil, they are simply exhausted. They have been recycling the same emotional machinery for so long that the machinery has begun to seize. The suggestion of a monkey is both the most ridiculous and the most logical solution they can invent. Larry Pennell's Dash remains beautifully oblivious throughout. He has accepted the series because it promised real quality and sophistication, and he continues to believe in that promise even as the ground shifts beneath him. There is something almost touching in that stubborn faith. I have known people like Dash performers who can recite the marketing language of a project with complete sincerity while remaining cheerfully unaware of how thin the actual material is. Pennell plays that quality without a trace of mean-spiritedness, and I am grateful for it. The comedy would collapse if we were invited to despise him. Instead, we are invited to recognize him. When the decision is finally made to pursue Cousin Bessie, I feel the episode's center of gravity shift. The studio has exhausted its own resources. It must now go up the hill to the Clampett mansion and ask for help. That journey from the air-conditioned panic of the executive office to the open, slightly chaotic warmth of the Clampett living room is one of the series' recurring pleasures, and it never feels more meaningful to me than it does here. The people who believe they control the machinery of dreams are about to discover that the most valuable performer in their new series is a chimpanzee who lives with a family that still keeps a cement pond and refers to a millionaire banker as Mr. Drysdale. I could linger for a long time on the precise wording of Chapman's despair, on the way the writers layer reference upon reference until the premise of the series becomes a kind of comic poetry. But what stays with me most is the emotional texture. Beneath the jokes about howdy doody and one-armed men and collie dogs, there is a quiet acknowledgement that storytelling itself had begun to feel tired. The Beverly Hillbillies in this episode does not claim to offer a solution. It simply offers a different set of eyes. And those eyes, Jed's calm practicality, Granny's fierce protectiveness, Jethro's boundless and unself-conscious hope, still feel to me like a form of grace. Every time I revisit this section, I find myself smiling at the sheer brazenness of the formula, and then a moment later feeling a small surge of affection for the people who are trying so hard to make it work. They are not monsters. They are simply lost inside a system that has forgotten how to invent. The monkey is coming. The Clampetts are about to walk into the frame. And for a little while at least, the tired machinery of Hollywood will have to make room for something that cannot be reduced to a list of stolen parts. That promise still excites me. It is why I keep returning to these scenes with the same anticipation I felt the first time I watched them. The collapse of Bachelor Sheriff Knows Best is not merely a plot device, it is an invitation. And I for one have never grown tired of accepting it.